when I watched what was going on, it was to me a sign of the people's frustration. We can be critical of the manner of the protest, but when it turns to violence like that, it's just a clear symbol of their frustration of what's going on. We've seen this before. Unfortunately, I don't know if we're necessarily out of the woods of this whole thing yet. When you look at a historical protest and when you have these type of incidents, you have that immediate reaction to the incident, and then down the road there could be a potential court case, and you might have another string of frustrations and riots depending upon what happens after the court case.
Chief Holloway, as a chief of police, you lead a lot of young men and women, a lot of patrol officers. I mean, I watched some of that last night, and it really made me sad. How did you feel as a chief of police watching that unfold in a city in that way?
And I agree to that. It does. It really tugs at you about that because, like, what are the other issues that are there? Like Chief Dugan was talking about, what are the underlying issues that need to be addressed in that community? Because there is some frustration built up in there, and you can hear it from the community. You can see it in the community. So it's mainly how do you go about addressing those issues, because it's going to be there for a long time, and you just got to start getting prepared for that. Not only preparing the community, but preparing your officers, because they're going to have to deal with that day to day, because that frustration is going to be there. And all law enforcement agencies, I'm not going to say this, both are working on continuing to build that trust in the community.
Were you, either one of you can take this question, were you surprised when you saw things, knowing, I'm sure you both watched the video of George Floyd, and I'll ask you about that in a minute, but then were you surprised to see what happened, or did you kind of expect it could go that way?
You mean as far as the protest?
Yeah.
I was, you can see where it can easily bubble over, in my opinion, especially the first night. I was kind of surprised to see that it happened the second night. Usually you have an opportunity to kind of regroup as a law enforcement agencies and come together and develop a better plan. But, I don't know exactly what the plan of was law enforcement up there. And sometimes you have to be careful second guessing other agencies from afar. But like I said, I think it's some of these protests and some of the damage that's being done is more symbolic of their frustration than it is anything else.
And I have to agree with Chief Dugan with that. The first night, you're not sure what's going to happen. And like I said, we don't know their plan, or I don't know their plan. You should always expect there's going to be, a small group that are going to act out, and you need to be prepared for that. And again, like I said, I don't know their plan, but there were a lot of people that were peaceful protesting, but you also got to worry about those outliers, that those other people are just there to cause some type of problems.
And I know that you both addressed this yesterday, but I'd like to ask you both again. First of all, did both of you watch the video of George Floyd with the Minneapolis officer?
Yeah, I have seen clips. It's been tough to find legitimate video, but I think I've seen enough, that's for sure.
And I agree with Chief Dugan. I've seen it enough. I don't want to see it again. I'm done with looking at it.
Can you please tell me what went through your mind as a police officer when you saw that?
Well, for me, I used the word I was deflated. To see that technique, which is not what we approve, it's not what we teach, but for it to go on for so long was just disturbing. And then I don't know what's more disappointing, the fact that the one officer was doing it and the other three didn't put a stop to it. I'm sure Chief Holloway would agree. We rely on officers to, our cops are human, and we understand that, but we rely on other officers that when you see someone who may be over-invested emotionally in a situation, we rely on other officers to step in front of them, take control of the situation, and de-escalate it. And it was disappointing to see that no one out there did that. No other officer seemed to step in, and for it to go on for that long is disturbing.
And I would say the same thing. Watching that tape was very disturbing. And I would say, you know, the first 5 seconds, okay, maybe they were trying to get him under control, but you didn't see that. That Mr. Floyd was just laying there, and for that officer just to stay in his position for 6 minutes, and I agree with the chief, that was really disturbing. The other three officers just to look at that and not react. We train officers, first of all, we train officers not to do that type of technique. And second, we train officers just like Tampa that when they see something like that, they will act on that. And I know Chief Dugan probably has the same policy that when they see something like that, they're going to act on it and then they're going to report it to the supervisor if they saw some officer doing something wrong in the performance of their duty. So there were two things disturbing, what the officer was doing and the other three just watching it happen. There was a man there asking for help, begging for help, and they just watched him.
Chief Holloway, I would imagine that you had a twofold perspective as a chief of police and as a Black American. Can you talk me through that maybe that tension that you see both sides of this so uniquely?
Yeah, I do. You know, the officers, we're trained to do certain things. So that disturbed me as a police officer to see that those three officers destroyed everything law enforcement has been working on, everything that we do every day. So they destroyed that. So just like we're talking to you now, Chief Dugan and I know the chief, we're out there every day now trying to build what we've already had, but they destroyed. As far as being an African-American male, that's very disturbing because, you know, that's a man just like anybody else. If he did wrong, take him to jail. I have no problem with that. But when a man is asking for help, when a man is pleading with you for help, like Mr. Floyd, you've got to be a man both sides. And so that is very disturbing to see that a man was treated that way. He broke the law, okay, but he didn't deserve the treatment that he received for that incident.
Mm-hmm. Both of you can, either one of you can answer this. I would imagine that it's an emotional day, the last 2 days in your department. It doesn't matter. You're in law enforcement. This is a brotherhood. This is a sisterhood. Do you guys say anything or do anything to kind of keep your departments focused and keep morale up?
Yeah, I had done a video yesterday to show to my officers. We put out internally to remind them to be careful how they respond to people's questions about this because it's an emotionally charged situation. And that there are people out there who try to bait them into a conversation. And then I reminded them of the obligation they have to step in situations like this, that when they see potential wrongdoing or when they see an officer is emotionally charged, that they have an obligation to step in and take over the scene and diffuse the situation. You know, we're there to protect others, even those, the ones that we have to arrest. And that is clearly what not happened here.
And what I've done here is go to, just talk to the officers in the hallway or just out in the street. And what I find amazing, which is nice to hear, that none of the officers I've spoken to can find justification on what those four officers done. They've all said, I don't know if the chief can say the same, Dugan. I know he can because I know how he treats his department. All the officers I've talked to said there was no reason for what those officers did. There's no tactic that anyone's taught them. There was no need for that. And they're trying to, I think, trying to grasp that. Why did those officers do that?
Mm-hmm. You know, I really feel like you guys covered it. I don't know if either of you have any topic of conversation or if you wanted to ask each other anything while you're here. I don't know if that's crossed your mind at all. Just feel free to jump in if you do have a question for each other.
You know, I'd be, you know, Tony, not to put you on the spot, but that's the way I am. What went through your mind when you saw, because like what I did was, when I see these incidents across the nation, I always think, man, what would happen if I were in my city and how would I respond as chief of police to an incident like that? And what went through your mind when you saw that?
I think you're absolutely correct to say, okay, that happened. First of all, how did that happen? How are we training our people? And how are we going to de-escalate this? And then the next thing is, what community leaders can I reach out to and talk to about this incident so we can come to the table right now and discuss this? I think that the chief up there is doing a great job. I know you quite well. I think we both would have done the same thing. Fire those men right then and there. Not even a question. After looking at that tape, you're done. I'll worry about arbitration, everything else later on. I don't want those men reflecting our police department because they're not part of our police department. And then preparing for what you know is going to happen. You're going to have, you have a great work relationship with your community. You're going to have those people that are going to be helping you, but then how do you prepare for those outsiders that are going to come in and disturb our community? Because they're going to leave and it's just going to be you and your community they're working afterwards, because they're going to come and loot and they're going to do whatever they want to do, those outsiders, but it's going to be us working with our community later on down the road.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It made me, it reminded me why I get up and go to work every day, and it's to build a better relationship with the community. And it's something that we have to work on every single day. And incidents like that can really, destroy a community's relationship with their police department. And it's just, these incidents just trickle throughout the nation. I kind of use it's similar to a hate crime. You have it happen in one city, and it can really trickle and affect and scare people throughout the nation. And that's what these type of incidents do. It does send waves throughout the nation and makes everybody reevaluate their relationship with their community.
And I think my question for the chief, it would be like, of course, the city is a little bit bigger than ours. I think he's going to have more flare-up or hot spots. Like, how are you going to control that? Because you got several minority communities spread throughout your city, whereas I have a concentrated area, so to speak.
Yeah, it comes down to just talking to them. We discuss that all the time, and having those relationships in place, discussing, we've always looked at both agencies, both cities, St. Pete and Tampa, have always been very flexible and tolerant of protest. And we always work with them so they can get their message out there. And that is part of it. And we have to be flexible and tolerant. We can't let them harm other people. We can't allow them to destroy property, but it's working with them so that they can get their message out, so that they can be heard. And that is the key to it. And just having that constant communication back and forth. Like you said, there's always a concern that someone from the outside might want to come and stir things up. But, I think as we work through them, we have a history of working with people. Both communities do. We've learned from our mistakes in law enforcement. I think we police better now than we ever had. And these type of incidents can really set us back. And so all we can do is continue every day to work hard and build a better relationship and communicate with the different portions of people who may want to protest and have a working relationship.
And I guess the only thing I want to add is I've been very fortunate. I worked in the Northeast and I worked down here. And I can tell you in this Tampa Bay community law enforcement area, we're very close knit. I think, as you can see, myself and Chief Dugan, we can call each other and say, hey, what happened here? We can feed off each other. We can ask each other questions. What mistake did you make here? What's going on here? How are you doing in your community? How are you disciplining your officers? What's your culture? So I can tell you, and this is Tony Holloway speaking, I can tell you whether you're in Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater, in any agency in the Tampa area, you're going to be treated the same because we talk to each other. And as we're speaking now, none of us are going to tolerate that. No chief, no sheriff in this area that I can put my life on it, that we're not going to tolerate that type of behavior with our law enforcement.
I think you guys covered it. I think it was a beautiful conversation, so I appreciate it. I'm going to put you both on the spot. My very last question. You guys have been police officers for a long time. Is there a moment or an event that you can share with me in all your years where you've maybe felt especially challenged, whether it was, I don't know your histories as far as, someone resisting arrest, or if you had to, use your gun, or I don't know. But just thinking about your careers, is there one moment that you said, wow, I really learned from that, or I'm so glad I de-escalated that, or I really needed to step in there, or whether race played a factor, any moment in your careers when you patrolled now, whatever it is that you can share with me that was defining for you in regards to some of the stuff we see today?
There was no one in particular incident for me. I've been part of the Tampa Police Department 30 years now. And when I first came on as a rookie cop, I worked in predominantly Black neighborhood and public housing. And that was kind of where I grew up on the police department. So I was kind of forced to build relationships in the Black community. And so I always have had strong relationships with the Black community in Tampa because that's where I grew up on as a police department. But when you see, some of these instances, I think back, I was a rookie cop, and I think back to Rodney King. And, you look back, we've had police officers killed in the line of duty where people have rallied behind the police department during those times. And I look back during Hurricane Irma, and, as an interim rookie chief of police and dealing with a serial killer in Seminole Heights, this is a community that rallied behind my department and myself personally, and they continue to. So, I've been very fortunate in my career. And so there really hasn't been a moment other than, I feel a tremendous amount of support from our community. But it's times like this that forces me to take a stand, which is why I'm here today, is why Tony's here today. The communities need to know that their law enforcement executives, the CEOs of the police department, aren't going to tolerate this type of behavior from police officers.
Mm-hmm.
So I would guess I would say two incidents. And first, I'm going to agree with the chief. That having that community support is great. Some of the community leaders are calling me now. They're probably calling the chief also. Hey, whatever you need, let's get together. Let's make sure this happens correctly in our community. So that's number one, building that relationship before an incident like this happens. I would guess, doing this job for over 30 years also, understanding that not officers are the same way. And let me give you a little bit of background on that. Is working undercover, doing a dope deal, African-American male with a gun, chasing after a suspect, other officers on the scene, and some of them didn't know me, and here's the African-American male running around with a gun in his hand, and the officers told me to stop, freeze. They had enough control that they didn't shoot and kill me. And I remember that night plainly, like I could have been killed right here and there. But that was training and control. So not all officers are that way. Some officers are very good with that.
You just gave me chills, Chief Holloway.
Well, and I remember the guy because his name was Tim Big, and I was screaming his name when he said, drop the gun, drop the gun. And, but again, here I am coming around the corner and there I am. So we do train our people the right way, and there are going to be some bad people out there. So don't think, so there are a lot of officers that really do slow down and think about what they're doing. And I would guess and the other thing was we've had some issues when I was a lieutenant, while working in Clearwater. We had issues of crowd people, but the officers that worked that community, they would say, because they knew us, they would say, don't wreck their cars. We know people. Don't do anything to those people. And it was kind of funny. And I think Chief Dugan can probably tell you more about when you become part of that community. And he can speak to me, especially being a white male. When you become a part of that community, they trust you because they know you and you're part of that. So they don't see you as a police officer. They see him as, that's Dugan, man. Don't hurt Dugan. That's Dugan. That's our buddy. And that's how you build that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's no doubt there was a time she asked, but it took me, when you brought it up, Tony, maybe it reminded me, there was a time when I was a young officer working in the public housing, and there's a kid in a stolen car. I was by myself, got behind him. The kid bails on the stolen car. I started chasing after him, and it was at night. I was by myself, and there were some clotheslines that were neck high that I did not see. It was dark, and literally got cut out, landed in the dirt and everything, all by myself. Just, like I said, got cut on the neck and everything. And here, an African-American kid saw what happened, went and caught the guy that was in the car, brought him back to me, and it helped me get up.
That's community right there. That's community policing.
Yes.
That's
Of course,
awesome.
that made fun of me that I got clotheslined, literally. But
And thank you. And so, Chief Holloway, just so I clarify that story, you were undercover doing drug stuff undercover. So those other cops did not know necessarily that you were a police officer, is what you were saying.
So back in the 80s, we used to do a reverse sting operation, and I was posing as a drug dealer. So I sold the guy the drug, the guy took off, and I took off chasing behind, which I shouldn't have done because they said in the thing, stay where you are. So I chased him, and the guy went around the house. I went around the house. The uniform people moved in, and the guy ducked underneath the house. So I was the first one to come around the corner, and there I was holding a gun in my hand. And again, the guy named was Tim Big, and he says, drop the gun. And I said, Tim Big, don't shoot me. It's me, it's me. But then he went through what he was trained on what to do first.
Sure.
He could have said, there's an African-American male with a gun in his hand, and I shot.
Wow. Well, Chief, this has been really, really helpful. And, I'm really encouraged to put this on the news tonight. So I thank you.